Hi, welcome back to another Ask GMBN Tech. You know it's the Q&A session. Get your questions in the comments underneath. Use the hashtag AskGMBNTech. And let's get started with this week's questions. Nearly couldn't get my words out then. Okay, first up is from Sharif Kalal. Why don't downhill bikes travel go over 200 millimeters? Why not 225 or 250? Well, actually, the very first Santa Cruz V10, it was called a V10, it's a virtual pivot point, and had 10 inches of travel, so that's 250 millimeters. Truth is, we just don't need that much travel, and also, wheel sizes have changed, and to accommodate the amount of travel that happens with the wheels moving, you've got to get in some pretty funky positions to get around your wheels, which is why you are seeing not all downhill racers committing to the bigger 29-inch wheel on the rear. Some of them are running a mullet-style setup, which means having a bigger front wheel and a smaller rear wheel to get that clearance. So essentially, geometry, a longer bike, slacker angles, better working suspension, there's just simply not much need to go over it. Yeah, there are some anomalies out there, but 200 mil is more than enough for a downhill race bike. I think that's absolutely fine. Yes, it is the sweet spot. Next up is from Lifetime MTB. You sound like myself. Doddy, loving the show. I've got a 2019 Canyon Torque AL, good bike that, and the clutch of the rear mech is a little bit too loose. Is there any way to make the clutch stiffer? Is it a SRAM clutch? If so, the SRAM one is non-adjustable, because it's a Type 2 style clutch. It's their own system, it's a non-adjustable clutch, and to get around that they have the cage lock for when you're removing the derailleur, for when you're removing the rear wheel from the bike there to lock out that cage. If it's a SRAM derailleur, then you're in luck, you can adjust the clutch on them. So yes, you've got the on and off lever, but if you remove the cover, you can adjust the tension on the actual clutch. In fact, on screen right now, hopefully should be some close-in detail shots that I shot on a recent video where I dismantled the clutch on a Shimano XT derailleur, which is actually no longer. That derailleur went to derailleur heaven fairly recently. Yeah, well, that's a story for another time. Okay, next up is from Haru McFarlane. Dotty, is it right to run a tubeless setup with a dented rim? How dented is the rim is the answer to the question in that one. So if it's still running tubeless, then yes, absolutely fine. And really, if possible, you want to get away from fixing a dent if it's a massive dent, because you could crease the rim and basically structurally weaken it. However, if it's a slight dent and it is interfering with stuff, then get an adjustable spanner or something big and flat like that. Basically, mold grips might be a bit too aggressive, something like the locking pliers from Nipex, something like that are a good form. So you can just put enough leverage on it just to sort of move it out. Just be cautious. If you go too far in it, you can actually snap that part of the sidewall, which is not what you want. But if the rim is still sealed with the tubeless system, it's not causing you problems, carry on riding it until the rim is completely done, and then buy yourself a new rim and get it laced up. You could do it yourself, or you could do it in a bike shop. Next question is from Chris Farnsworth. Dotty, I've got a question about action cameras. Currently, I've got mine attached to the top of my helmet, but I think it looks too big and sticks up too much. I thought about mounting to my handlebars, doesn't give the POV effect. I also commute to work using my bike, and the cameras help with the odd idiot I've encountered. What do people prefer, helmet, handlebar, or body strap? Okay, well, straight out, don't bother putting it on the bike. You get too much movement and it's not the same. So on your head is actually the best position if you're following someone. So if you've got the camera on the top of your helmet, like if you've got a Bell helmet, and I think there's a few others that got dedicated mounts that clip on, putting it on there is the best to follow someone, because it's the most stable and you get that POV point of view footage basically. Otherwise, you want to mount it in different places on your helmets. Now, a lot of riders choose to put them under the peaks on full face helmets because it's out the way, it doesn't sort of sit anywhere, and it's here. The downside is you can't always, depending on the peak design, get it exactly where you want. You can sometimes see it in your view, which is not good at all. And of course, if you have a crash, the first thing you're going to hit is the peak, and because of the additional weight on it, you're definitely going to be snapping that thing off with the GoPro attached. So, not necessarily the best. Probably the best all-rounder point of view positioning is the chesty style strap. Now, this will work if you're running a rucksack or a hydration pack. You get a view of the handlebars, you can just about see your legs in the shot, you see the bike, and you see what you see. Now, for your riding to work and stuff, this is great because you get a really good viewpoint. And also for riding on a bike, it's great. In fact, here's a shot of me riding one of my local trails, actually, with the chesty point on. But something I like to do is actually what I call it a bite mount. Now, In the scuba diving world, you can buy dedicated bite mounts, but I found they're a bit flexible, so the actual camera moves on them. When you're in the water, I guess it doesn't affect that because the water supports the weight of the camera. So I wanted to make my own version of one of those. So I got the baseball cap mount. In fact, I'm going to go and get it and show you. I should be more prepared. Give me a second. Okay, so that is your chesty mount strap system. If I just put it on to show you. Apparently it's like putting on a bra. I wouldn't know that. Say what you want in the comments. But you get the idea. So when you're riding, it's in this position and you want to be like this so the camera is facing forwards. Of course, the camera's not in there right now, but it's a really good, pretty secure setup. And with the more modern GoPros and stuff, it works really well. So that's probably your best all-rounder. But of course, that is a bit of kit to buy. Now, this is what I've made. So I've got myself, I think they call these the frame. It's just the bare minimum frame to carry the GoPro. And that's a baseball cap mount. I've covered it in 3M rubber mastic tape, and I can put it in my mouth. This is not what you want if you're riding to work or anything like that, because it means you can't basically speak or even breathe properly at times. However, for the way I ride, I like to clip this just in the side of my hydration pack when I'm riding. And if I know there's a good bit of trail coming up, I can literally just hit the red button, stick it in my mouth, ride the bit of trail, red button, put it back in again, and I've caught it. And it's amazing footage. So I've got a GoPro 7. So the footage isn't incredible off those compared to the latest ones. And the hyper smooth on it is all right. It's not bad when it's on your body, but it's amazing on here because your head really doesn't move. So here's the same trail on a chesty strap on screen. In fact, if there's a split screen, hopefully the editor could do that. And the other one is my bite mount. So the downside is you get a bit of weird heavy breathing, but that's okay because you can just put some music over it. But the footage is insane. If you get the right height, you can see the handlebars in the shot and you can see the trail moving around, but you don't get any juddering. It's so cool for filming. Some people have commented saying, oh, what happens if you fall off? Well, I know exactly what happens when I fall off my bike. The first thing I do is go, ah, and it falls out your mouth. So I wouldn't worry about falling off the bike with that in my mouth because that just doesn't happen with me. However, it might be different for you. So there's some ideas for you. But really, like I said, the best one for traffic, and if you've got a mount, will be the one that's on your head because for obvious reasons, it gets the best vantage point. But the best all-round point of view for riding and for doing what you're doing would be the chesty. So check those out. Great bits of kit. The only one thing with the chesty, though, I've got to say, is people are guilty of posting too much footage all shot from the chesty. Now, if you're going down a really rough downhill where you're moving around a lot, the sensation of the handlebars moving back and forwards to and from the camera, and the same the saddle coming into view, can be quite sickening to watch. It's a bit like sort of makes you feel disorientated. So just be cautious if you are using one of those, how much you use that footage. Okay, next question is from Elliot Wolfert. Why are mountain bike companies not coming out with mountain bike specific free coaster hubs? I guess there's a lack of demand for them. So in the past, there has been some hubs that have been made for some athletes, like, for example, Brett Reeder, Brandon Seminoke, Josh Lewis, some options, but you can get around it. You can do a bit of a hack. Have you tried the coaster hack, where you skip out one of the sprockets on your rear cassette and you put in a spacer instead, and then you shift gears so your chain runs over that spacer? And in fact, there should be some footage on screen of one I set up for Chris Smith. Actually, I set up his old nuke-proof Mega so we could use it for jibbing basically, so we could do free coaster runs, half cabs, stuff like that. I also ran the front brake hose through the head tube there so you could do his bar spins. Yeah, I don't know, I guess it's just a lack of demand, to be honest, but there's probably a good chance that something might come out because slopestyle bikes are not going away, but it's not going to be big money for manufacturers, so there's a lot of work to put in to get something like that to work for this market. If anyone out there knows of something that is compatible for mountain biking, I don't off the top of my head. It would be really good if you could help out in the comments and get involved. So if you know about mountain bike free coasters, get stuck in. In fact, I do know that our Toffee Dan is obsessed by going backwards. He's been going backwards his whole life. No offence, Toff, I mean backwards on the bike. He's really good at fakie riding. In fact, I'm going to give a little throw out to him on his Instagram page, right on the screen, right here. Check out some of the stuff he does. He's a sick rider, and hopefully he'll chip in the comments because he's one of our moderators, and he'll let you know about free coasters. And in fact, we can do something. I'll get him on the show, and we'll do something with free coasters and sort of BMX tech that comes into mountain biking. I think it could be kind of interesting. What do you think? Let us know. Next one's from Andre Schlud. Hope I said that right. Thank you for a great show. A question about suspension linkage bearings. Suspension bearings never really make a full turn, therefore possibly wear only on one side. Yep. Does it make sense to rotate the inner surfaces once in a while to increase their lifetime? Yeah, absolutely. You'll get grease peaks, I guess you could say, as well. So yeah, if you remove your shock or deflate it or remove the core from it and cycle the system through the travel, getting those bearings moving a bit more than they might usually move for your normal riding is definitely can help. Yeah, or take the bearings out, fully rotate them, pop the covers off, just inspect them. Yeah, for sure. And so what you're talking about here is something that a lot of people might not have picked up on, the fact that depending on where the bearing is used in the bike, you might have a bushing or a bearing for different reasons. So a bushing will put up with high load. It doesn't need to move much to do its job well, but in a situation where it's going to rotate a lot, a bushing could arguably have a bit more friction. So a perfect example of someone who uses bushings and bearings together is Ibis bikes. And here's an Ibis bike on screen. Now they use, let me get this right, they use bearings in the actual rocker at the top that moves a lot, but in the DW link down the bottom that doesn't move very much at all, they use bushings in there. I hope I've got it the right way around, but they do that for that exact reason, because of the fact that the bearings, you get them going all notchy down the bottom there, and also more in the firing line down by the bottom bracket shell from mud and stuff that wears them out. So yeah, you're absolutely right. Looking after your bike essentially is the key to this, but yeah, great shout on that. Make sure you rotate your bearings every now and then to make sure they're getting all the grease that they need to stay smooth. Okay, next up's from Ian B. I've got a transition hardtail with a 30mm seat tube. I'm looking into a dropper post, but I don't know if a 27.2 post and a shim with only 110 travel will be worth it. Yeah, 100%, of course worth it. That's still 4 inch, well, just over 4 inches of drop. In fact, some cross-country racers are using as little as 60, in fact, maybe even less than that on some bikes, just enough just to get the saddle out of harm's way, so when they're sort of pedaling over rougher terrain, it can really make a difference to absorbing the shock and moving around on the bike. Yeah, do it, 100%. And don't worry about the shims, although you might want to make sure, depending on your frame material and stuff, is it steel or is it alloy? I don't know. Use some sort of assembly compound because the shims can creak. Yeah, so on the outside of the shim and also on the inside of the shim when a post goes into it, bearing in mind that it doesn't need to move as such, so you're not lubricating it, you're basically help it come out afterwards, and you want it to not move at all when it's in there, if that makes sense. Carbon safe grease is fine, but make sure you use an assembly compound that's got the little bits in it, and that'll be great. But yeah, 110mm of travel. That's like having a suspension fork or not. Definitely worth it, isn't it? Okay, next question. If you do a video on geometry, please can you address the burning question, are bikes getting too long? Yeah, I'm not sure how to approach that, because I think you are right to a degree, because some bikes are definitely getting too long for what their intention is. Not all bikes have to be long. It's all about relating them to the end user, how they ride and what they do. And a longer bike is definitely more stable, definitely more controllable in terrain. But you're right, it's going to take away the fun element of it. It's kind of why Blake's kind of going back to 27.5-inch wheels. He loves the way they feel. I mean, look at the way he rides. Who are we kidding? Like, it suits the way he rides more than a bigger 29-inch wheel bike. But even then, Blake's bikes now are much bigger than when I started riding with him on the channel. When we started, bikes had progressed. I've been just searching for that same measurement the entire time, and finally I think the bike industry's caught up with where I am. So I'm definitely on the side of the longer bikes, but yeah, there's definitely food for thought there. Some people are certainly riding a bike that's too capable for them, if that's such a thing. Yes, that's a great thing, because it means you're going to be able to tackle terrain safely and in control, but it can also be slightly less fun to ride, because it can make, to get the same sort of feel and response out of a... If you put like a cross-country bike against a trail bike, a cross-country bike, you can be absolutely buzzing and nearly out of control on a very mundane descent. You don't have to go far to get that. Whereas on your trail bike with more progressive modern geometry that's far more stable and all the rest of it, you've got to push them way harder to get that back. And that is not really suitable for everyone, depending on where you live and your riding ability. So yeah, there's definitely food for thought there. Let's have a little bit of a poll down in the comments. What do you like? Do you prefer longer bikes or do you prefer shorter bikes? We'll pick this up in a show, I think. I think this is a really good discussion to have. And I need to do a bit of research on the bikes that are excessively long. I mean, there's a lot out there. Jomatron bikes are massive. Mondraker bikes are massive. Bird, Pole, of course. Some of their bikes are huge. There's enough out there now with big geometry, but I think that most brands are kind of catching up to a good point. But yeah, see what you think. Get involved in those comments underneath, and we'll pick it up on a future show, the weekly show that is. Hopefully you enjoyed this week's Ask GMBN Tech. Let us know if you've got any questions. If you've got any questions to ask me, about bikes, about people I've ridden with, anything goes. Get involved in the comments, don't be shy, and we'll catch up soon. See you later.